Raymond Russell's life changes forever with a single breath. The 28-year-old human biologist stands frozen in his lab aboard the interspecies research vessel Celestial Horizon, his eyes wide with disbelief. He's just activated a dormant pheromone gland during a routine self-examination, releasing a scent that immediately permeates the air. Across the lab, Bryn, a female Vorkarian scientist, suddenly stops her work. Her typically stoic demeanor vanishes as she turns to face Raymond, her large, iridescent eyes dilating. She takes a step towards him, then another, her movements uncharacteristically jerky and uncertain. "Bryn, are you okay?" Raymond asks, concern etching his features. Bryn doesn't respond. Instead, she inches closer, her breath coming in short, rapid bursts. The ship's AI, ever vigilant, detects the sudden spike in her heart rate and hormone levels. A medical alert blares through the lab's speakers, startling both Raymond and Bryn. Within minutes, the lab door slides open, and more female Vorkarians pour in, drawn by Raymond's scent. Their reactions mirror Bryn's, flustered, intensely focused on Raymond, and seemingly unable to control their actions. Captain Marcus Steele's voice cuts through the chaos over the ship-wide comm system. "All personnel report to the main conference room immediately. This is not a drill." In the conference room, Captain Steele's grim expression tells Raymond this is far more serious than a simple medical anomaly. "Russell, your newfound ability poses a potential threat to the human-Vorkarian alliance. The Vorkarian High Command is demanding you be quarantined and studied." Raymond's stomach drops. "Studied? But I didn't do this on purpose." Steele holds up a hand. "I know, but there's more. Earth's government sees potential in your condition. They've ordered me to protect you at all costs." As if on cue, alarms blare throughout the ship. Dr. Elena Kovacs, the lead xenobiologist, rushes in. "Captain, we have multiple medical emergencies. Other human males are attempting to activate their own pheromone glands." Steele curses under his breath. "Russell, you're under house arrest for your own protection. Dr. Kovacs, I need you to study this phenomenon. If prolonged exposure causes a mating urge in female Vorkarians, it could lead to diplomatic incidents," Kovacs finishes, her eyes widening. As Raymond is escorted to his quarters, he notices Bryn following at a distance, her gaze never leaving him. The tension between them is palpable, a complex mix of biological impulses and interspecies uncertainty. Inside his room, Raymond paces, his mind racing. He's become the center of a galactic incident, his body now a potential weapon, a diplomatic bargaining chip, and possibly the key to saving an entire species. As he stares out at the stars, he wonders how a simple self-exam could have led to this, a human male's scent becoming irresistible to alien girls, and possibly changing the course of interstellar relations forever. Raymond's confinement in his quarters felt suffocating. The stars beyond his window, once a source of wonder, now seemed to mock his predicament. He paced restlessly, his mind churning with questions about his newfound ability and its consequences. A soft knock at the door startled him from his thoughts. The door slid open, revealing Bryn's tall, slender form. Her iridescent eyes met his, and Raymond felt a jolt of electricity pass between them. "I've been assigned to monitor you," Bryn said, her voice carefully neutral. She stepped inside, the door closing behind her. Raymond nodded, acutely aware of her presence. "How long will this last?" "Until we understand what's happening," Bryn replied, moving closer. Her eyes darted to his lips, then quickly away. "Dr. Kovacs is working on it." As the days passed, Raymond found himself growing accustomed to Bryn's constant presence. Despite her efforts to maintain professionalism, the air between them crackled with unspoken tension. Accidental brushes of hands and lingering glances became more frequent, each instant sending a thrill through Raymond's body. One afternoon, as Raymond reached for a datapad, Bryn moved to hand it to him. Their fingers touched, and neither pulled away. For a moment, they stood frozen, the contact electric. Bryn broke the silence, her voice husky. "Raymond, The ship-wide comm system crackled to life, interrupting whatever she had been about to say. Dr. Kovacs' excited voice filled the room. "Captain Steele, I've made a breakthrough. Please gather the senior staff in the main lab immediately." Raymond and Bryn exchanged glances, both relieved and disappointed at the interruption. "I should go," Bryn said softly, reluctantly stepping away. In the main lab, Dr. Kovacs paced excitedly in front of a holographic display. Captain Steele and the other senior staff members watched with rapt attention as she explained her findings. "The activation of Raymond's pheromone gland wasn't random," Kovacs said, gesturing to a complex diagram. "It was triggered by a rare cosmic radiation burst we encountered during our last mission." The implications of her words sank in. Steele's brow furrowed. "Are you saying this could happen to other humans?" Kovacs nodded. "Under specific circumstances, yes. We need to implement strict radiation monitoring protocols ship-wide immediately." As the crew scrambled to enact new safety measures, news of Raymond's condition spread through the Alliance fleet. The Celestial Horizons communication system lit up with incoming transmissions from other ships, all requesting permission to dock. In his ready room, Captain Steele rubbed his temples, feeling the weight of command more acutely than ever. "Denied," he said firmly to his communications officer. "We can't risk further complications." Meanwhile, Raymond's confinement began to take an unexpected turn. His senses, already heightened by his activated gland, seemed to grow even more acute. He found himself noticing subtle changes in the ship's ambient sounds and vibrations. One night, as he lay in his bunk, a faint, irregular hum caught his attention. It was barely perceptible, but Raymond knew instinctively that something was wrong. He pressed the comm panel. "Bryn, are you there? I think there's a problem with the life support systems." Bryn's voice came through, tinged with concern. "What do you mean?" "I can hear it," Raymond explained. "Something's off with the oxygen recycling unit." Bryn relayed the information to engineering, and within minutes alarms blared throughout the ship. Raymond's warning had come just in time to prevent a critical failure that could have been catastrophic. In the aftermath of the near disaster, Captain Steele reluctantly agreed to allow Raymond limited movement within the ship, always under Bryn's watchful eye. As they walked the corridors together, Raymond couldn't help but notice the varied reactions of the Vorkarian crew members they encountered. Some, like Bryn, seemed drawn to him, their eyes following his every move. Others reacted with open hostility, baring sharp teeth and emitting low growls as he passed. The human crew members watched these interactions with a mixture of fascination and unease. During one of their supervised excursions, Raymond and Bryn found themselves in a rarely used observation deck. As they admired the view of a nearby nebula, voices drifted from a nearby maintenance alcove. "Anabo, sell the information to the highest bidder," a hushed voice said. "With Russell's condition, we could make a fortune." Raymond and Bryn exchanged alarmed glances. They crept closer, straining to hear more of the conversation between the group of human and Vorkarian crew members. "It's too risky," another voice argued. "If we're caught—" "We won't be," the first voice insisted. "Think of the possibilities. His pheromones could be weaponized, used for mind control. The Zinthari would pay handsomely for that kind of advantage." Raymond felt a chill run down his spine. He turned to Bryn, seeing his own shock mirrored in her eyes. They had to decide quickly: report this conspiracy to Captain Steele or try to handle it themselves. Before they could act, a new alarm sounded throughout the ship. Captain Steele's voice came over the comm system, tense and urgent. "All hands to battle stations. Unknown vessel approaching at high speed." Raymond and Bryn rushed to the bridge, their discovery momentarily forgotten in the face of this new threat. On the main view screen, a sleek, otherworldly ship shimmered into view, its design unlike anything in the Alliance database. "Sir," the communications officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission. It's from the Zinthari. They're requesting an audience with Raymond Russell." The bridge fell silent as all eyes turned to Raymond. In that moment, he realized that his simple self-examination had set in motion events that could reshape the balance of power in the galaxy. As the Zinthari ship drew closer, Raymond braced himself for whatever came next, acutely aware of Bryn's protective presence at his side. The tension on the bridge was palpable as the Zinthari ship loomed ever closer. Raymond felt the weight of countless eyes upon him, his newfound importance a burden he never asked for. Bryn's protective stance beside him offered a small measure of comfort in the face of this unprecedented situation. Captain Steele's voice cut through the silence. "Mr. Russell, I need you to return to your quarters immediately. Dr. Kovacs will meet you there shortly." As Raymond turned to leave, Bryn caught his arm. "I'll escort him," she said, her tone leaving no room for argument. In the relative privacy of the corridor, Raymond leaned close to Bryn. "We need to talk," he whispered urgently, "about what we overheard earlier." Bryn nodded imperceptibly, her eyes darting to ensure they weren't overheard. "Later," she murmured, "after Dr. Kovacs is done." Back in Raymond's quarters, Dr. Kovacs wasted no time setting up her equipment. Her movements were precise, but Raymond could see the underlying tension in her posture. "We need to find a way to control your pheromone output," she explained, attaching sensors to Raymond's temples and chest. "The last thing we need is an interspecies incident with the Zinthari." As Kovacs worked, Raymond felt a sudden sharp pain lance through his skull. He gasped, doubling over. "Raymond?" Bryn's voice sounded distant, muffled. The pain intensified, and suddenly, Raymond was aware of everything. He could feel the hum of the ship's engines, taste the recycled air, hear the thoughts of those around him. It was overwhelming, terrifying. I can't control it," he managed to gasp out. Without warning, a wave of emotion burst from Raymond, washing over Bryn and Dr. Kovacs. The two women staggered, their eyes glazing over momentarily. What was that?" Dr. Kovacs asked, shaking her head to clear it. Before Raymond could respond, the ship-wide comm system crackled to life. "All hands, brace for contact. Zinthari delegation boarding in 5 minutes." Raymond struggled to his feet, fighting against the pounding in his head. "We have to go," he said, his voice strained. "They're here for me. I need to face this." Bryn and Dr. Kovacs exchanged worried glances, but didn't argue. As they made their way to the docking bay, Raymond noticed crew members reacting strangely to his presence. Some seemed drawn to him, while others recoiled, baring teeth or clenching fists. The docking bay was a flurry of activity as the Zinthari ship connected with the celestial horizon. Captain Steele stood at the forefront, flanked by security personnel. As the airlock cycled open, Raymond felt another spike of pain, accompanied by a surge of awareness. The Zinthari delegation emerged, their alien forms unlike anything Raymond had ever seen. At their head was Ambassador Zandor, a towering figure with iridescent skin and eyes that seemed to peer directly into Raymond's soul. As soon as the Zinthari entered the room, chaos erupted. Several of the aliens began to twitch and convulse, while others seemed to enter a trance-like state. The human and Vorkarian crew members weren't faring much better, with some collapsing to the ground and others advancing aggressively towards the newcomers. Ambassador Zandor, however, remained calm. He strode purposefully towards Raymond, ignoring the mayhem around them. "Mr. Russell," the ambassador's voice resonated in Raymond's mind rather than his ears. "We have much to discuss." Before Raymond could respond, a group of crew members surged forward, their eyes wild and unfocused. "Get him!" one of them shouted. "He's worth a fortune!" Bryn reacted instantly, placing herself between Raymond and the attackers. "Security, to the docking bay!" she yelled into her comm unit as she engaged the first assailant. The room descended into pandemonium. Security officers grappled with the would-be kidnappers while trying to contain the affected Zinthari. Captain Steele barked orders, attempting to regain control of the situation. Amidst the chaos, Raymond felt another surge of psychic energy building within him. The pain in his head reached a crescendo, and suddenly he was connected to the ship itself. He could feel the strain on the power core, the fluctuations in life support, the imminent danger they all faced. "Captain," he called out, his voice carrying an otherworldly resonance. "The ship! Something's wrong with the main power core." As if to confirm his words, alarms began blaring throughout the vessel. The ship's AI's voice cut through the cacophony. "Warning! Critical overload detected in main power core. Explosion imminent. Evacuation protocols initiated." Captain Steele's face paled. "Options?" he demanded of his officers. "We could jettison the affected sections," the chief engineer suggested hesitantly. "But we'd lose a significant portion of the crew and our guests." Raymond knew there had to be another way. Concentrating with all his might, He reached out with his mind, attempting to interface directly with the ship's AI. The flood of information nearly overwhelmed him, threatening to drown his consciousness in a sea of data and sensory input. As Raymond struggled to make sense of the ship's systems, the battle around him raged on. Bryn fought fiercely to protect him, her movements a blur of precision and power. Ambassador Xandor observed the scene with an inscrutable expression, making no move to intervene. Time seemed to slow as Raymond delved deeper into the ship's consciousness. He could see the problem now, a complex interplay between the Xinthari technology and his own psionic outburst had created a cascading failure in the power systems. With growing confidence, he began to manipulate the ship's energy flow, rerouting power and stabilizing critical systems. The strain was immense. Raymond felt as if his mind was being torn apart, stretched across the vast network of the ship's computers. But he persevered, driven by the knowledge that the lives of everyone aboard depended on his success. As Raymond worked, the chaos in the docking bay began to subside. The affected crew members and Xinthari started to regain control of themselves, looking around in confusion at the aftermath of their actions. Suddenly, the alarms fell silent. The ship's AI spoke again, its tone almost surprised. Power core stabilized. Danger averted. All systems returning to normal operation. Raymond sagged to his knees, exhausted beyond measure. Bryn was at his side in an instant, supporting him as he struggled to stay conscious. Captain Steele approached, his expression a mix of relief and apprehension. "Mr. Russell," he began, but was cut off by Ambassador Xandor. "I believe," the Xinthari said, his mental voice echoing in the minds of all present, "that we have much to discuss about the future of human evolution and the balance of power in our galaxy." As the implications of the ambassador's words sank in, Raymond realized that his journey was far from finished. The events of the past few hours had irrevocably changed the course of his life, and potentially the fate of humanity itself. With Bryn's steadying presence beside him, he prepared to face whatever challenges lay ahead. As the implications of the ambassador's words sank in, Raymond felt a sudden, searing pain lance through his skull. The world around him blurred, and he was vaguely aware of Bryn's arms tightening around him as he slumped forward. In that moment, Raymond's consciousness expanded beyond the confines of his body. He found himself adrift in a sea of data, surrounded by pulsing energy pathways that he instinctively recognized as the celestial horizon systems. The ship's power core loomed before him, a chaotic maelstrom of energy threatening to tear itself apart. Without conscious thought, Raymond reached out with his mind, grasping at the wild tendrils of energy. He wove them together, redirecting power flows and stabilizing critical systems. The strain was immense, but he pushed through, driven by the knowledge that failure meant certain death for everyone aboard. As the last connection fell into place, Raymond felt a wave of relief wash over him. The alarms throughout the ship fell silent, replaced by the AI's calm voice. Power core stabilized. Danger averted. The victory was short-lived, however, as the mental exertion took its toll. Raymond's expanded consciousness snapped back into his body with brutal force, and he collapsed to the ground, unresponsive. Bryn reacted instantly, her protective instincts kicking into overdrive. "Raymond!" she cried, cradling his limp form. She looked up at Captain Steele, her eyes wild with concern. "He needs medical attention, now!" But before the captain could respond, Bryn made a split-second decision. She scooped Raymond into her arms with surprising strength and bolted from the docking bay, leaving a trail of stunned onlookers in her wake. "Security! Stop her!" Captain Steele barked, but it was too late. Bryn had already disappeared into the ship's corridors. Using her intimate knowledge of the celestial horizon's layout, Bryn navigated a series of maintenance tunnels and rarely used passageways. She emerged in a secure medical bay, typically reserved for high-ranking officers. Without hesitation, she sealed the doors behind her and began barricading the entrance with whatever equipment she could move. As Bryn worked to secure their position, she failed to notice the bizarre occurrences taking place throughout the ship. Doors opened and closed seemingly at random, and the temperature fluctuated wildly from one section to another. In engineering, baffled technicians watched as systems came online and shut down without any input from the control panels. Back in the docking bay, Ambassador Xandor observed the chaos with an unreadable expression. He turned to Captain Steele, his mental voice cutting through the din of confusion. "It appears your Mr. Russell has integrated with your ship's artificial intelligence, a fascinating development, but potentially catastrophic if left unchecked." Captain Steele's face paled. "What do you mean, integrated?" "His consciousness has merged, at least partially, with your ship's systems," Xandor explained. "We Xinthari have encountered similar phenomena before. We possess technology capable of separating them safely." Steele's eyes narrowed with suspicion. "And what would you want in exchange for this assistance?" "Unrestricted access to Mr. Russell and all data related to his condition," Xandor replied without hesitation. "His abilities could reshape the balance of power in our galaxy. We must understand them fully." As Steele wrestled with the implications of the ambassador's offer, Bryn finished securing the medical bay. She gently laid Raymond on an examination table, her heart racing as she took in his pale, unresponsive face. "Come on, Raymond," she whispered, attaching monitoring equipment to his body. "You have to wake up. I can't do this alone." Suddenly, Bryn felt a strange sensation in her mind, like a gentle tickle at the edge of her consciousness. She gasped as Raymond's voice echoed in her thoughts, weak but unmistakable. "Bryn, danger, Xinthari." "Raymond," she said aloud, gripping his hand tightly. "I can hear you. What about the Xinthari?" Through their newfound telepathic link, Raymond shared a torrent of information. Images and data flashed through Bryn's mind, classified files, secret communications, and buried reports. The truth hit her like a physical blow. The Xinthari weren't here to help. They planned to use Raymond's unique biology to create a terrifying weapon, one capable of controlling the minds of entire populations across the galaxy. Bryn's mind raced as she processed this revelation. She knew she had to act fast to protect Raymond and prevent the Xinthari from carrying out their plan. Drawing on her knowledge of Vorkarian biology, an idea began to form. Moving quickly, Bryn gathered a collection of medical supplies and began mixing a complex chemical compound. Her hands worked with practiced efficiency, combining various elements in precise measurements. "This should temporarily neutralize the effects of your pheromones," she explained to Raymond's unconscious form. "It won't last long, but it should be enough to get us out of here without affecting the crew." Just as Bryn finished preparing the compound, she heard the sound of approaching footsteps outside the medical bay. The security team had found them. "Bryn, this is Captain Steele," a voice called through the sealed door. "Open up, immediately. That's an order." Ignoring the captain's demands, Bryn administered the compound to Raymond via hypospray. She then hefted him onto her shoulder, her enhanced Vorkarian strength making the task easier than it would have been for a human. "Hang on, Raymond," she muttered. "We're getting out of here." As Bryn prepared to make her escape, she heard the distinct sound of a cutting torch beginning to work on the door. Time was running out. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for what was to come. With Raymond's unconscious form secure in her arms, she moved towards the rear of the medical bay, ready to use every trick and secret passage she knew to evade capture and protect the man who had become so important to her, and potentially to the fate of the entire galaxy. Galaxy. As Bryn grappled with this revelation, the medical bay door finally gave way with a screech of protesting metal. Captain Steele burst in, followed closely by a security team and Ambassador Xandor. Their eyes widened at the sight of Bryn holding Raymond's limp form. "Stand down, Bryn," Steele ordered, his voice tight with tension. "We need to—" His words were cut short by a sudden lurch of the ship. Alarms blared to life, and the AI's voice echoed through the corridors. "Unknown vessel approaching. All hands to battle stations." Steele's comm unit crackled. "Captain, you're needed on the bridge immediately," came the urgent voice of his first officer. For a moment, Steele hesitated, torn between the situation in the medical bay and the new threat. Ambassador Xandor made the decision for him. "Go, Captain," the Xinthari said, his mental voice unnervingly calm. "We will handle matters here." Steele nodded curtly and sprinted towards the bridge, leaving Bryn, Raymond, and the ambassador in a tense standoff. As if on cue, Raymond's eyes fluttered open. He gasped, sitting up abruptly and nearly tumbling from Bryn's arms. "The ship," he rasped. "I can feel it. Something's coming." Before anyone could respond, Raymond was on his feet, swaying but determined. "We need to get to the bridge," he insisted, his voice growing stronger with each word. Bryn, still processing the information Raymond had shared telepathically, nodded in agreement. "He's right," she said, addressing the security team. "Whatever's happening, Raymond might be our best chance at understanding it." The security officers looked to Ambassador Xandor, who inclined his head in assent. "Very well," he projected, "but I will accompany you." With no time to argue, the unlikely group made their way to the bridge. As they hurried through the corridors, they were joined by Dr. Kovacs, who had been alerted to Raymond's awakening. They arrived on the bridge to find Captain Steele engaged in tense communication with an unknown entity. On the main view screen, a sleek, otherworldly vessel hung against the backdrop of space, its hull shimmering with an iridescent glow. Raymond stumbled forward, his eyes fixed on the alien ship. "The Nixari," he breathed, drawing surprised looks from those around him. "They're here because of me, because of the jump." Captain Steele turned, his eyebrows raised. "You know who they are?" Raymond nodded, his face pale. "I can sense them, their intentions. They're curious about the jump, about me." As if in response to his words, the comm system crackled to life. A melodious voice filled the bridge, speaking in a language no one recognized, no one except Raymond. "They want to talk," he translated, his voice tinged with awe. "They're requesting permission to send a delegation aboard." Captain Steele's teeth gritted as he weighed his options. After a moment, he nodded. "Tell them they're welcome, but we'll need time to prepare." As Raymond relayed the message, Steele turned to his crew. "Prepare for first contact protocols, and someone get me a translator that actually works." The bridge erupted into controlled chaos as preparations began. Amidst the activity, Ambassador Xandor stepped forward, his mental voice cutting through the noise. "Captain, I must insist that the Zinthari delegation be present for these negotiations. Our agreement—" "Your agreement stands, Ambassador," Steele interrupted, his tone brokering no argument. "But let's be clear, this is my ship, and I'll conduct these negotiations as I see fit." As tensions rose between the captain and the ambassador, Bryn noticed Raymond swaying on his feet. She moved to his side, steadying him with a hand on his arm. "Are you all right?" she asked quietly. Raymond shook his head, his eyes unfocused. "Something's happening," he murmured. "My body, it's changing again." Dr. Kovacs, overhearing their exchange, rushed over with a medical scanner. His eyes widened as he read the results. "His pheromone production is spiking," he announced. "We need to get him isolated before—" It was too late. A wave of Raymond's pheromones washed over the bridge, affecting everyone in its path. Human crew members began shoving each other, their faces contorted with sudden aggression. The Vorkarians, including Bryn, felt an overwhelming attraction to Raymond, their eyes glazing over with desire. Only Ambassador Xandor seemed unaffected, watching the chaos unfold with clinical interest. Dr. Kovacs, fighting against the influence of the pheromones, fumbled in his medical bag. He produced a hypo-spray and pressed it against Raymond's neck with shaking hands. "A suppressant," he explained through gritted teeth. "It won't last long, but it should help." As the medication took effect, the frenzied atmosphere on the bridge began to subside. Captain Steele, looking shaken, straightened his uniform. "Doctor, I need you to synthesize more of that suppressant. We can't risk another incident like this, especially not with our guests about to arrive." Dr. Kovacs nodded and hurried off the bridge, already mentally calculating the necessary compounds. Raymond, his head clearing, looked around at the aftermath of his uncontrolled emission. His eyes met Bryn's, and he saw a mix of concern and something else, something deeper in her gaze. He opened his mouth to speak, but was interrupted by the ship's AI. "Captain, the Nixari vessel is initiating docking procedures. Their delegation is ready to board." Captain Steele took a deep breath, squaring his shoulders. "Very well. Let's make history, people. Mr. Russell, Ms. Vega, you're with me. Ambassador Zandor, if you would join us as well." As they made their way to the docking bay, Raymond felt a strange mix of anticipation and dread. He could sense the Nixari more clearly now, their alien minds a complex tapestry of thoughts and emotions. Whatever was about to happen, he knew it would change everything, for him, for the celestial horizon, and perhaps for all of humanity. The docking bay doors hissed open, revealing the Nixari delegation. Tall, slender beings with iridescent skin and large almond-shaped eyes stepped forward, their movements graceful and deliberate. At their head stood two figures who immediately commanded attention, a female with an aura of scientific curiosity and a male whose stance spoke of military precision. As Captain Steele began the formal introductions, Raymond felt a sudden, overwhelming connection to the ship's systems. In his mind's eye, he saw power fluctuations cascading through the celestial horizon circuitry, building towards a critical failure. "Captain," he gasped, his voice strained, "the life support systems, they're failing on this deck." "Deck, we need to—" Raymond's warning was cut short as the ship's lights flickered and dimmed. The artificial gravity wavered, causing everyone to stumble. Captain Steele rushed to a nearby console, his fingers flying over the controls. "Life support is indeed failing," he confirmed, his voice tight with concern. "We're experiencing a cascade failure across multiple systems." The Nixari delegation exchanged glances, their large eyes blinking in rapid succession. The female scientist stepped forward, her iridescent skin shimmering under the emergency lights. "We may be able to assist," she said, her voice melodious despite the translator's metallic tones. "Our ship's systems are compatible with yours. We could establish a temporary link to stabilize your life support." Captain Steele hesitated for a moment, weighing the risks of allowing an alien species access to their systems against the imminent danger of life support failure. "Do it," he decided, nodding to the Nixari. As the aliens worked to establish the link, Raymond's eyes unfocused, his mind connecting with the ship's AI. Through this newfound connection, he saw the problem's source, a hidden subroutine buried deep in the ship's code, designed to trigger a systems failure at the moment of first contact with a new species. "Captain," Raymond called out, his voice strained with the effort of maintaining the connection. "This isn't an accident. Someone sabotaged the ship." Before Steele could respond, a priority communication from Earth broke through the ship's compromised systems. The captain's face hardened as he listened to the transmission. "They're demanding we return you to Earth immediately, Mr. Russell," Steele announced, his tone grim. "They claim you're too valuable and potentially dangerous to remain in alien hands." The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. Bryn moved closer to Raymond, her protective instincts flaring. Ambassador Zandor's mental voice cut through the tension. "I must remind you, Captain, of our agreement regarding Mr. Russell." Steele's eyes hardened as he weighed his options. After a long moment, he straightened his shoulders and addressed the room. "I'm implementing a temporary information blackout," he declared. "We need time to stabilize our systems and assess the situation without outside interference." As the captain began coordinating efforts to restore the ship's functionality, Dr. Kovacs approached Raymond with a medical scanner. "Your pheromone production seems to have stabilized," he reported, studying the readouts. "But there's something else." His voice trailed off as he noticed Raymond's distant expression. "I can hear the ship," Raymond murmured, his eyes darting back and forth as if reading invisible text. "Not just the AI. I can access the databases, the sensor logs, everything." Dr. Kovacs exchanged a worried glance with Bryn. "His psionic abilities appear to be expanding rapidly," he said quietly. As Raymond processed the flood of information, his eyes widened. "Captain," he called out, his voice urgent, "I've found something you need to see." Steele hurried over, followed closely by Ambassador Zandor and the Nixari scientist. Raymond's fingers danced over a nearby console, bringing up a series of encrypted files. "Each species here has hidden agendas," Raymond explained, his words coming faster as he sifted through the data. "The Zinthari aren't just interested in diplomatic relations. They're after advanced weapons technology. The Nixari have been monitoring Earth for centuries, waiting for humans to develop certain genetic markers. And Earth—" he paused, his expression troubled. Earth knows more about my condition than they've let on. They've been running a secret program to replicate it. The revelations sent shockwaves through the assembled group. Captain Steele's face darkened with anger, while Ambassador Xandor's mental projections became a chaotic swirl of emotions. The Nixari scientist, however, seemed more intrigued than surprised. "Your abilities are remarkable," she said, addressing Raymond directly. "I am Dr. Zara, chief xenobiologist of our expedition. With your permission, I would like to work with your Dr. Kovac to study your condition further." Before Raymond could respond, alarms blared throughout the ship. The AI's voice, tinged with urgency, filled the bridge. "Warning! Unauthorized access detected in the Weapons Control Center. Security breach in progress." Captain Steele sprang into action, barking orders into his communicator. "Security teams to the Weapons Control Center immediately! This is not a drill!" As chaos erupted around them, Raymond felt a strange sensation building within him. His vision blurred, and he stumbled, caught by Bryn's strong arms. "Raymond, what's wrong?" she asked, her voice infused with concern. "Something's happening," he gasped, his entire body trembling. "I can feel everyone." Suddenly, a wave of psionic energy burst from Raymond, washing over the entire ship. For a brief, stunning moment, every mind aboard the Celestial Horizon was connected, human, Vorkarian, Xinthari, and Nixari alike. In that instant of shared consciousness, secrets were laid bare, and motivations became clear. The Xinthari extremists, their plan to seize control of the ship now exposed, found themselves overwhelmed by the emotions and thoughts of those they sought to subjugate. As the psionic link faded, leaving everyone aboard shaken and disoriented, a new understanding began to take root. The shared experience had revealed the common desires for survival, understanding, and peace that united all species, despite their differences. Captain Steele, his pupils dilating from the experience, took a deep breath and addressed the stunned crowd on the bridge. "It seems we have a lot to discuss," he said, his voice steady despite the turmoil of the past few minutes. "And I believe it's time for all of us to lay our cards on the table." As the various factions began to cautiously open up about their true intentions, Raymond leaned heavily against a console, exhausted by the enormous psionic output. Bryn stood close, her hand on his shoulder, offering silent support. Dr. Zara approached them, her large eyes filled with a mix of scientific curiosity and newfound respect. "Your abilities are unlike anything we've encountered," she said softly. "They could be the key to a new era of interspecies cooperation." Before Raymond could respond, the ship's AI interrupted once more. "Captain, long-range sensors are detecting a massive fleet of unknown origin approaching our position. Estimated time of arrival, 6 hours." The bridge fell silent as the implications of this new development sank in. Captain Steele turned to face the assembled representatives of Earth, Vorkaria, Xinthar, and Nixari. "It seems our time for discussion may be limited," he said grimly. "Whatever's coming, I suspect we'll have a better chance facing it together than divided by our secrets and mistrust." As the captain began organizing preparations for the approaching fleet, Raymond and Bryn exchanged a look of persistence. They knew that the next few hours would be crucial, not just for the Celestial Horizon, but potentially for the future of interstellar relations. With the unknown fleet drawing ever closer, the newly formed alliance faced its first true test. The fate of multiple species hung in the balance, and at the center of it all stood Raymond Russell, a man whose unique abilities had the power to unite or divide the galaxy. The assembled group on the bridge tensed at the AI's announcement. Captain Steele's eyes narrowed as he processed the new threat. "Helm, set course for the nearby nebula," he ordered, his voice steady despite the urgency of the situation. "We need to buy ourselves some time." As the Celestial Horizon glided into the swirling gases of the nebula, visibility dropped dramatically. The ship's sensors struggled to penetrate the dense cloud of dust and ionized particles. Raymond, still reeling from the psionic event, felt a strange resonance building within him. The nebula's unique electromagnetic properties seemed to amplify his connection to the ship's systems. "Captain," he called out, his voice strained, "I think I can use the nebula to boost my abilities. I might be able to make contact with the approaching fleet." Steele regarded him with a mix of concern and interest. Are you sure that's wise, given your current condition? Before Raymond could respond, Bryn stepped forward. I'll stay with him, sir. My presence seems to help stabilize his abilities. The captain nodded, knowing they had few options. Proceed, but be careful. We can't afford to lose you, Mr. Russell. Raymond closed his eyes, focusing on the strange energy coursing through him. With Bryn's hand on his shoulder, he reached out with his mind, pushing through the interference of the nebula. Suddenly, his consciousness brushed against something vast and alien. The lead ship of the approaching fleet loomed in his mind's eye, its crew's thoughts a cacophony of unfamiliar patterns. I've made contact, Raymond gasped, his body trembling with the effort. They call themselves the Korvax. They're incredibly advanced. They detected the energy from my psionic event and see it as a potential threat. As Raymond relayed the information, Dr. Elena Kovac burst onto the bridge, her eyes wide with excitement. Captain, we've made a breakthrough, she announced, gesturing to Dr. Zara and a Zinthari researcher behind her. We've discovered a way to amplify Mr. Russell's abilities, Dr. Kovac continued. It could allow for clearer communication with the Korvax, but... She hesitated, her expression growing serious. The procedure carries significant risks to his health. Captain Steele's face hardened as he weighed the options. The ship's sensors chirped a warning. The Korvax fleet had begun sweeping the nebula with advanced detection methods. We're out of time, Steele decided. Dr. Kovac, proceed with the amplification. Mr. Russell, are you willing to take this risk? Raymond nodded, his mind focused. Bryn's grip on his shoulder tightened. I don't like this, she said, her voice low and tense. I have to try, Raymond replied, meeting her gaze. It might be our only chance. As Dr. Kovac prepared the procedure, the tension on the bridge mounted. The Korvax ships drew closer, their gravity-manipulating technology beginning to distort the nebula around them. Raymond gritted his teeth as Dr. Kovac administered the treatment. Pain lanced through his body, every nerve ending screaming in protest. But with the pain came power. His mind expanded, pushing beyond its previous limits. With a surge of effort, Raymond projected his thoughts towards the Korvax fleet. Images of peace, cooperation, and shared discovery flowed from his mind. For a moment, it seemed to work. The Korvax ships slowed their advance. But the strain proved too much. Raymond's eyes rolled back in his head, and he collapsed to the deck, his body convulsing. Raymond, Bryn cried, cradling his head as Dr. Kovac rushed to his side with a medical scanner. The ship's communication system crackled to life. A deep, resonant voice filled the bridge. This is Supreme Commander Zix of the Korvax Imperium. We request a meeting with your representatives. Captain Steele exhaled slowly, relief and concern warring on his face. Acknowledged, Supreme Commander. We'll prepare for your arrival. As the crew scrambled to arrange the meeting, Bryn refused to leave Raymond's side in the medical bay. His vital signs fluctuated wildly, but seemed to stabilize whenever she touched him. Dr. Kovac observed this phenomenon with growing interest. The emotional connection between you two, she mused. It might be key to his recovery and the development of his abilities. Hours passed in tense preparation. The Korvax delegation, led by the imposing figure of Supreme Commander Zix, boarded the celestial horizon. Their crystalline bodies shimmered and shifted as they moved, drawing awed stares from the assembled crew. As negotiations began in the main conference room, an unexpected alert sounded from the medical bay. Raymond's eyes snapped open, his hand instinctively reaching for Bryn. We have to get to the meeting, he said, his voice hoarse but urgent. Something's changed. I can feel it. Supporting each other, Raymond and Bryn made their way to the conference room. Their arrival caused a stir, particularly among the Korvax, who seemed visibly affected by Raymond's presence. Using their newfound connection, Raymond and Bryn generated a psionic field that enveloped the room. Suddenly, understanding flowed between all present, transcending language and species barriers. The Korvax, experiencing emotions long suppressed in their pursuit of technology, began to see the value in cooperation. The negotiations took on a new, promising tone, but just as hope began to blossom, the ship's AI interrupted with a dire warning. Massive energy buildup detected in nearby star. Supernova imminent. Estimated time to detonation, 20 minutes. The room erupted into chaos as the implications sank in. The supernova threatened not just the celestial horizon and the Korvax fleet, but several inhabited systems in the sector. Raymond and Bryn exchanged a look of understanding. They knew their combined abilities might be the only hope of averting disaster, but the attempt could cost them everything. As alarms blared and the star's core continued to destabilize, all eyes turned to Captain Steele. The fate of billions now rested on his decision, and the clock was ticking. Ticking. The fate of billions hung in the balance. Captain Steele's eyes darted from Raymond to the main view screen, where the swollen star pulsed ominously. He took a deep breath. Decision made. "Mr. Russell, Ms. Vega," he said, his voice steady, "if you believe you can prevent this catastrophe, you have my full support." Raymond nodded, gripping Bryn's hand tightly. "We have to try, Captain. It's our only chance." "Agreed," Steele replied. He tapped his communicator. "All hands, initiate evacuation protocols. This is not a drill." As the ship erupted into organized chaos, Dr. Kovacs and Dr. Zara approached the couple. "We've prepared the psionic chamber," Dr. Kovacs explained, her eyes bright with a mix of excitement and fear. "We've integrated Nixari bioamplifiers and Zinthari energy conduits. It should significantly boost your abilities." "But the strain on your bodies will be immense," Dr. Zara added, her large eyes filled with concern. "Are you certain you want to attempt this?" Raymond and Bryn exchanged a look, their bond palpable to all present. "We're sure," Bryn said firmly. As they made their way to the psionic chamber, the ship shuddered. The Korvax fleet had engaged their gravity manipulation technology, creating a protective bubble around the celestial horizon and the surrounding ships. The psionic chamber was a marvel of impromptu engineering. Nixari bioorganic tendrils snaked across the walls, pulsing with an eerie blue light. Zinthari crystals hummed with awe-inspiring energy, their facets refracting the chamber's soft illumination. Raymond and Bryn stepped into the center of the room, facing each other. Their eyes met, and for a moment the universe faded away. They leaned in, sharing a tender kiss. As their lips met, a visible aura of pheromones swirled around them, eliciting gasps from the assembled scientists and crew members. "Ready?" Raymond whispered. Bryn nodded, a small smile on her face. Together. They clasped hands, their fingers intertwining. As one, they closed their eyes and reached out with their minds. The effect was immediate and staggering. Their consciousness expanded, rocketing across the vast emptiness of space toward the dying star. Through their shared psionic vision, they saw the star's roiling surface, the chaotic energies building within its core. The ship's AI, intimately connected to Raymond, flooded their shared consciousness with data, stellar physics, energy manipulation theories, and complex calculations flowed through their minds like a river of pure information. Using this knowledge, Raymond and Bryn began their work. Their combined psionic energy reached into the star's core, visualizing its structure down to the subatomic level. They started to manipulate the stellar material, redirecting plasma flows and dispersing pockets of concentrated energy. On the bridge of the celestial horizon, the assembled Alliance members watched in awe. The star's energy readings fluctuated wildly on the main view screen. "It's working," Dr. Kovacs breathed, her eyes fixed on the readouts. "They're actually stabilizing the core." But the strain on Raymond and Bryn was immense. In the psionic chamber, their bodies trembled with effort. Blood trickled from their noses, and their muscles spasmed involuntarily. Yet they pressed on, their shared drive fueling their efforts. As they worked, their psionic link deepened beyond anything they had experienced before. Their individual minds merged, becoming a single, incredibly powerful entity. Memories flowed between them. Raymond's childhood on Earth, Bryn's training as a security officer, their first meeting on the celestial horizon. Hopes, fears, and dreams mingled and intertwined until it was impossible to tell where one consciousness ended and the other began. This melding exponentially increased their psionic strength. With renewed vigor, they pushed deeper into the star's core, their combined will forcing order upon the chaotic energies threatening to tear it apart. Outside the chamber, alarms blared as the star's output spiked dangerously. Captain Steele gripped the arms of his chair, nucleus tightening with tension. Supreme Commander Zix of the Korvax stepped forward, his crystalline body shimmering with inner light. "Captain," he said, his resonant voice filled with perseverance, "we will channel our fleet's energy to support their efforts." At Zix's command, the entire Korvax fleet lit up, pouring their vast energy reserves into the protective bubble surrounding the celestial horizon. The additional power flowed through the ship's systems and into the psionic chamber, suffusing Raymond and Bryn with renewed strength. In their shared mindscape, Raymond and Bryn felt the influx of energy. With one final, monumental push, they dispersed the last pocket of destructive force within the star's core. The effect rippled outward. On the screen, the star's violent swelling began to subside. Energy readings dropped rapidly, stabilizing at normal levels. In the psionic chamber, Raymond and Bryn collapsed into each other's arms, utterly spent but alive. Their physical forms had merged slightly during the process. A strand of Bryn's dark hair now shimmered with the same unnatural hue as Raymond's, while Raymond's eyes had taken on flecks of Bryn's deep brown. As the immediate danger passed, the bridge erupted into cheers. Captain Steele allowed himself a small smile before turning to Supreme Commander Zix. "It seems we have much to discuss," he said, extending his hand. Zix regarded the gesture for a moment before reaching out with his crystalline appendage. "Indeed we do, Captain," he replied, his voice tinged with newfound respect. "Perhaps there is more to emotion than we had believed." In the aftermath of the averted catastrophe, the Alliance celebrated their collective victory. As Raymond and Bryn recovered in the medical bay, attended to by Dr. Kovacs and Dr. Zara, news spread throughout the ship of their incredible feat. Captain Steele entered the medical bay, his face a mixture of awe and concern. "How are they?" he asked Dr. Kovacs quietly. "Stable," she replied, her eyes gleaming with excitement. "But Captain, you won't believe what we've discovered. Their genetic structure has been altered by the experience. They're now, well, I'm not sure how to classify them. They're beyond human." Steele's brow furrowed as he processed this information. "And the implications of this are—" Before Dr. Kovacs could respond, Raymond stirred on his bed. His eyes fluttered open, immediately seeking out Bryn. Their hands reached for each other, fingers intertwining. "Captain," Raymond said, his voice hoarse but clear, "we need to talk about the future, about what we saw." Steele nodded gravely. "Rest for now," he said. "We have time." As he turned to leave, the ship's AI spoke up. "Captain, I'm detecting similar energy signatures from other humans throughout the fleet. It appears Mr. Russell's condition may be spreading." The implications of this announcement hung in the air as Captain Steele left the medical bay, his mind racing with the possibilities and potential dangers that lay ahead. The celestial horizon had weathered one storm, but it was clear that their journey was just getting started.
If you finished this story, please subscribe and like the video. Then leave a comment that says, "I liked the story," and I will heart every single one of them. It really helps me. Thank you for your time.